Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So after starting to gig with my band, there have been a few things that I've learned about playing live that I had no idea about from my previous state of only ever playing with myself alone in my bedroom. I mean, by myself alone in my bedroom. So I wanted to make this video for those of you who, like me, might be surprised by some of these things, and also those of you who have your own experiences to share about your journey to playing live. To me, playing live is such an incredible experience. It's probably one of the best feelings in the world, and I feel like it's often not appreciated enough, especially among smaller musicians, because we're constantly caught in the loop of trying to chase growth, and we kind of overlook this amazing experience of playing for other people. And so this video is also about bringing some of that appreciation forward, both from myself and you guys as well, those of you who had the privilege of playing live, or those of you who are looking forward to it. So let me just preface by saying that I am just about the least comfortable person in the world when it comes to playing in front of others. I've always dreaded the idea of even playing in front of my mom or my friends. As a kid, I was raised by a very strict piano teacher grandma, and I played the piano on stage a bunch of times, and all of those were always horrific experiences for me, and not because I messed up in some way, but just because of the nerves. I'm also the kind of person that if I so much as start thinking about failure or being nervous, it very quickly takes over my mind and starts to spiral out of control until I blank out. And that actually happened to me once when I was a kid performing on stage. I had to stop and start the piece completely from the beginning. By nature, I am really not a stage kind of person. So the reason I'm telling you this is because knowing that about myself, I would have never guessed that the nerve side of getting up on stage and playing in front of others would actually be the least of my challenges when it came to playing live. And the second reason is, of course, because I suspect that some of you will relate to my feelings, and then you'll definitely watch this video until the end and give me 100% audience retention, and you'll like and subscribe and comment, and you'll even share this video with your friends. So first off, let me tell you how I deal with the nerves, because they sure as hell are still there, and I suspect always will be. First of all, and quite obviously, I've played our songs so many times that I can play them without having to concentrate at all. For example, I can watch something while playing our songs, and also I can play them without having to look at the fretboard like 90% of the time. What I also find really important, but maybe is a little bit less obvious, is the fact that I make a point about learning the songs both consciously and unconsciously. Let me explain. So you know how when you first learn a piece of music, you start out by learning the fret positions and the strings that you're supposed to play on, and you really have to focus on what you're doing, or some of you wonder kids out there might actually be learning the notes. And then as you play the piece more, it starts to sink into your muscle memory, and you start to be able to not really focus on what you're playing, but the song kind of becomes a string of hand positions that you go through to replicate the performance. Well, when that happens, you don't actually consciously recall the frets as you're playing through the song, and you start to forget the fret positions. That's when, during a stressful moment, such as performing live, you can suddenly find yourself withdrawn from that sequence of actions, and suddenly you'll feel lost because you don't remember what frets you're supposed to be actually playing on. And muscle memory can fail you. For someone like me, this is very likely to happen when combined with the stress of playing live, and so I actually made it a point to memorize the fret positions of most of my parts. So all in all, what I've done is, when I first learned the songs, I went through the normal path of learning the fret positions and strings until it sank into my muscle memory, and then when I realized this weak point, I've kind of relearned the fret positions and made sure that I actually consciously can recall where I'm supposed to be playing certain things that sometimes muscle memory can basically fail me. Of course, this isn't completely fail-safe, and from time to time I still get moments where I blank out for a couple of measures, but doing this has definitely significantly reduced the amount of stress-induced errors that I get in a live show. The other thing that massively helps me resist the pressure of the audience, so to speak, is to adopt the mindset that the audience is there because they really want to hear what you want to play, and they are enjoying themselves. And it also greatly helps to put on a smile. Changing your facial expression to a smile actually makes your brain believe that you're enjoying yourself, and that pushes stress pretty far away. Just try it out now. So then comes the second major issue, which amplifies the first issue's effects of stress, and that is physical performance. You're on stage, and what everyone in the audience takes for granted as the way musician weirdos behave is actually very intentional, calculated, exaggerated, and overall difficult as fuck, at least for me. Now you have to not only play the right stuff, and play it well mind you, while under the effects of all that stress, but you also have to worry about what you look like while you're doing it, that you don't look boring and stiff. For me, whatever I thought was more than enough movement, I've had to actually multiply that by 3, both in terms of the number of moves I do and their amplitude, to just begin to scratch the surface what the bare minimum requirement for movement is, or at least how I perceive it. This means that practicing while sitting down has not been very useful, and I've actually had to stand up and do the movements that I plan to do on the actual performance while practicing and pretend there's an audience watching me. So then comes the third element, which once again amplifies the effects of the previous one, and that is the crowd. One thing I never considered while playing in my bedroom is actually looking at people's faces, expressions, and reactions to your performance. From everything that we normally get to see about live performances, the thing in our minds automatically that comes up is images of people shouting and jumping and really enjoying themselves. But this is definitely not always the reality. When you're a relatively unknown band like us, pretty much no one in the audience is gonna know your music or is gonna be absolutely excited to see you. And so the reality of the show might be that you get a couple of headbangers, you know, maybe a couple of people going crazy just because they're really drunk, and then a couple of people nodding their heads, but most of the sparse crowd is just gonna kind of be standing there and just looking at you. The way I like to think about it, and this might be a little bit of wishful thinking, and I'm also judging by myself somewhat, is that when people don't know a piece of music, they're not gonna go outwardly crazy about it. Even if they are enjoying it, they might stay relatively still. However, seeing that reaction from a pretty sparse crowd, you still have to be at 200% of your performance, which is actually supremely difficult. I personally just try to imagine everyone going crazy, you know, bunch of mosh pits, girls showing tits and then I throw on a smile and enjoy my little dream world. All right, we're finally at our last point. Do you remember which point number it is? It's point number 4. And this is the mother of all live performance problems for bands at our size, the final boss of the live performance expansion, and that is hearing yourself. Most gigs I've played so far, I've only been able to feel, more so than hear, a tiny hint of my guitar sound. And it was just enough to tell that I am actually producing a sound. And sometimes I don't even get that much. I recently even bought a budget IEM system, which I have a more detailed video for, and I've used it on our most recent gigs, and to be honest, it hasn't helped that much because first of all, we now have 4 things in it: my guitar, 2 sets of vocals, and accordion, but also because we rarely have any time to set up the levels properly while we're doing a line check or sound check. So of course, not being able to hear yourself makes you play worse. It makes you make more mistakes, and what's even worse is that when you do make a mistake, it takes you longer to realize you're making a mistake because you can't hear yourself. You then see that people in the audience are not mega excited and jumping up and down, and you start wondering if you sound like shit or if you've been missing everything by 1 fret. You really need to have an iron grip on all of the other aspects that I spoke about before to push through a show when you're not able to hear yourself or other instruments, which is basically most shows for bands at our level, unless you have a closed IEM system, which costs thousands and is big and heavy. One last bonus point I'm going to give you is the logistics of having a gig. You usually arrive at the venue often several, sometimes many hours in advance. By the time you're getting on stage, you've already been stressed for hours and you're tired, making dealing with all the other aspects that I mentioned that much more difficult. As I said, you have to have a strong grip over all of those elements, because if one of them starts to slip, it might just be a landslide. And I don't want to end the video without listing some honorable mentions, which I have a list for right here, so here we go. Gear problems. Your bandmates' movements on stage, sometimes they can bump into you or cross your path, which you don't expect. Personal issues that are bringing you down around the show date. Needing to shit or piss. Yeah, that happens all the time with people. Being cold or hungry, which happens all the time as well. Arguments between bandmates. These things happen. Small stages, especially for bands like us, which are a 6-piece. There hasn't been a sufficiently big stage that we've played yet. Tuning, which you don't often hear that you're out of tune. That could be a big problem. Wardrobe problems. And I'm sure there's many more. But despite all that, and I guess this is a little bit of appreciation that gets thrown in at the end. Playing live is absolutely amazing and I love it. It's the most incredible feeling when you get to play your instrument loud as hell in front of a bunch of people, especially if those people are showing signs of enjoying it, and I certainly feel very, very lucky to get to do it. So what are your experiences playing live, especially when you just started out? And for those of you who haven't, do you think you'd like to? Please let me know down in the comments below. I'm kind of interested to see your experiences and what you guys think about it in general. If you'd like to find out more about my compact and robust live rig based around the quad Cortex, then this is the video for you. But this is where I'm going to leave it. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.